Our Lord said to them, "Go ye into the whole world and preach the gospel to every living creature."
The price for your glory is their suffering.
It's too dangerous.
We asked for this mission. you.